Good evening. Welcome to The Big Question on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram, and tonight we're asking if India can manage its cooking gas crunch even as war in the Middle East is disrupting our LPG supply. So across cities, hotels and restaurants, they are flagging all these shortages when it comes to LPG. Some are already shutting down, many are trimming hours and dropping the slow cook items in particular. That's how they're dealing with it, but industry bodies are urging intervention. Suppliers, and of course they're also in places like Bengaluru and Chennai, all of them are saying that they cannot ensure deliveries, and there are warnings that this could hit livelihoods, of course, and their revenues across the chain. So that's the kind of fallout that we're looking at this time. And yet prices of cooking gas have jumped about 60 rupees for domestic cylinders, 115 rupees for commercial cylinders. So that's the highest level of prices we've seen since August 2023. You're seeing it across the board, the old prices and how the new prices stack up. And the government says it is in action mode right now. So refineries, they've been told to boost LPG output. The Essential Commodities Act has been invoked for petroleum and gas. Domestic and essential non-domestic supply, that has been prioritized now. And the domestic refill wait, that has been extended. It was 21 days, now it's gone up to 25 days. So this is to deter any kind of hoarding, any kind of black marketing. So that's what the government is doing. And we are told that talks are on with multiple supplier rations. And of course, we're looking at officials saying that we were in crisis until a few days ago, but not now. So that's what we're hearing as well. There are claims of 10% uptick in domestic LPG production over the last 48 hours and daily supply holding at about 60 lakh cylinders. But the structural risk is quite real. India consumes about 30 to 32 million metric tons of LPG annually, and India imports about 60 to 65% of LPG. 85 to 90% of LPG imports, they come from the Middle East itself, and that too, it comes from the Strait of Hormuz, where the trouble area is. So that choke point is also where 20% of global LNG shipments actually pass. And Qatar, like we know, Qatar is the world's largest LNG exporter. Regional tensions have rattled those flows and indeed the prices, which is why the big question tonight, which is right up there, now as we're seeing the Middle East war disrupt all the supply lines, does India have it to be able to control our supply of cooking gas at a time like this? It's going to hit households for sure. But yes, on the commercial side, restaurants are taking the brunt. And we're about to understand this from the restaurateurs. There is heat emanating from the kitchen. How are restaurateurs across cities in India dealing with the impact? We've got you a ground report.
20% of our restaurants has already been closed, and right now also, as on date, I have been receiving messages all across Mumbai from our members that there is a black marketing going on. Within the span of day or two, 50 to 70% of our outlets all across Mumbai have to be forcibly closed.
This is very unusual and very sad. This shouldn't have happened, and it's going to be an havoc. And very soon my supplies itself is going to be till evening 4 to 5. After that, most probably I'll have to shut down myself.
नहीं, जो कल हमारा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर बोल दिया आपको कल से सप्लाई नहीं होता है करके बोल दिया, हम शॉक हो गया. जो मिनिस्टर बोल रहे 60 दिन से भारत में सिलेंडर का कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है करके मिनिस्टर का एक ट्वीट है. अभी जो ऐसा बोल रहे नहीं, हमारा प्लांट में गाड़ी गया सैटरडे से हम commercial filling ही बंद किया करके डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर बोल रहे.
So you get a sense of the largeness of the impact. Now to the core question of cooking gas supply right now. Can we manage this crisis? Let's check in with the panel. Joining us this evening, Pranav Rungta, he's Vice President of NRAI. Along with him, Sanjay Kumar, the CEO and Managing Director of Rassens. Purva Jain is a lead energy specialist in gas and international advocacy. She's part of IFA for the South Asian region. Sumit Ritolia is also with us. He's a lead analyst at Kepler. Gaurav Sen Gupta is Chief Economist at IDFC First Bank. And let's just begin with this first round of questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking for sharp and brisk responses right now from each of you so we know where you stand. Our viewers are clued in. Pranav Rungta, to you on the ground, what do you see as the single biggest constraint at the moment? Is it allocation? Is it the last mile supply? Is it the pricing? And what is that one immediate fix that you want from the government?
I think there is adequate LPG supply right now in reserves. It is allocation of LPG to commercial, which should be the single point concern which we are asking the government for.
Sanjay Kumar, from a procurement and operations lens, what is the most realistic workaround for the next 72 hours, if I may ask you? The rerouting of cylinders, would you say? Is it the PNG bridges, the electric induction? What are the safety risks that we must avoid right now?
Well, that's an interesting question, and thanks for asking that. So we produce about 350,000 meals every day for factories, for offices, for educational institutions. So our production also impacts manufacturing. Okay, some of the largest clients in the country, the food is made by us. So the challenge we face is, of course, there is a challenge, but we shouldn't panic because it is not that there isn't a solution. Right now, the challenge is that there are middlemen who are trying to profit from this situation. And I think that's not fair because we need to come together. You rightly mentioned there's a huge gap in terms of, storage. For LPG, the storage capacity we have is much lesser. And while we can increase production of LPG, it comes at the cost of decreasing production of diesel and petrol. So there is going to be some trade-off, and that will have a consequential impact too. So to your question, in the near term, what we see is commercial production of food will be hit. It will have a cascading impact on manufacturing because food at work will come into play, which can be a serious threat in the near term. But we do believe that this is not a problem that is insurmountable. There are alternative sources. The lag is more about 2 weeks more than what it would take from Qatar and the Middle East. But I would imagine that over the next 2 weeks is when we should all be a bit mindful. But more importantly, the traders need to be more ethical.
So the black marketing right now needs to stop, and that's the main ask. Purva Jain, what about you? Given our import dependence, the Hormuz bottleneck right now, do you see this as a short-lived dislocation, or you think this is going to be a multi-week kind of risk that we're looking at? What is the telltale metric that you're watching right now on this?
So it depends on, how long the conflict lasts. We have seen such disruptions in the past. We saw them during the pandemic. We saw them during, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We saw, if you talk about the metric, one metric to track would be the Saudi Aramco propane future prices. We saw them touching at $700 in 2021-22. Right now, they are around 550 to 580, which does not translate into a very rapid increase in price for domestic LPG, considering what you mentioned that we're importing 60% from the Middle East. So as of now, it's more about like how long the conflict will last. If from the signals that are coming out and what was spoken yesterday, markets are also already beginning to stabilize a little bit. But in case something changes, then we'll have to sort of wait and watch on the duration of the conflict. For now, like everyone's saying, something.
So duration of the conflict is, of course, up in the air right now. We do not know. But Sumit Ritolia, just taking this across to you, what do the shipping and the cargo flow data points, what do they say? Are LPG loadings, diversions, are they improving? Are we seeing more cancellations or slippages right now? What's the scene? Sumit?
Like as of now, we're not seeing any movements via Strait of. Hello.
Yes, carry on. Now we can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry. So as of now, like what I was mentioning, that we are not seeing any LPG movement via Strait of Hormuz. But moving more into the deep, like we should factor in like why government has started questioning or why government has started rationing the supplies, because government is looking, in our view, looking at 2 to 3 weeks ahead, because as of now the situation at Hormuz doesn't look to be opening within few weeks. Even if it's open, suppose next week, it will take around 2 to 3 weeks for the proper supply chain of LPG to stabilize. So and as you already pointed out that we import around 50 to 55% of LPG what we consume via Strait of Hormuz. So it's the situation is grim, and I think as of now we need to factor in like there might be a period of disruption in LPG supply. But on other part, we have heard that, and also we are getting in our terminal that LPG supplies from US and other parts like Argentina has also supplied LPG at times. So that might pick up. But again, voyage time is a critical factor for these volumes. Like even
course.
if it gets loaded in first or second week of March, it would come at around 30 to 40 days late. So
Right.
that's why like we were
So there
so
is gonna be a
dependent
lag.
of Middle East, because it
Yes.
used to come around 7 to 10 days.
Correct.
Yeah.
Gaurav Gupta, if this kind of price range, the hikes that we've seen, 60 rupees for domestic LPG, 115 for commercial, if these kind of hikes persist, then what's the outlook on the inflation and the demand impact over the next month or so? Is this going to be a manageable blip, or you think this is going to be a drag on urban consumption?
I think it's manageable for now, but it's obviously, as the person earlier said, it's all about the duration. That's
Yes.
none of us know. For example, if it's for a one or few weeks, it is manageable. Yes, the situation is a bit tight, but it is manageable if it's a short duration shock. If it persists, then yes, there will be an impact. For now, like for example, the 60 rupees per cylinder increase, which roughly 7% pickup, will translate into a 14 basis points increase in headline inflation over March and April. So that's I would say still a moderate pickup, and this is not like the full impact of the increase in the international LPG prices have been passed on. It's been a certain amount, and this was actually due because the domestic LPG prices, there is a negative margin that the OMCs have been absorbing for the last couple of persistently, actually, even before the Middle Eastern escalation started.
Right.
Our base case is that the consumer will be protected. So we don't see too much risk to inflation. The first shock absorber will be the OMCs on petrol, diesel, partly on LPG also. The second shock absorber will be the government of India.
Correct.
So, for example, you could see some reduction in excise duty on petrol, diesel, etc., to
Right.
keep consumers as well as the farmers
So you see the
protected.
government moving on this as well. We'll see exactly how the shocks are absorbed. Pranav Rungta, I want to ask you, with this priority that is being given to households and there are limited commercial allocations, what is your ask right now? Is it going to be a time-bound carve-out for restaurants? Is it going to be pooled procurement? Is there any kind of state-level bridging mechanism that you're seeking? And how do you deter the hoarding that was spoken about just a moment ago while we are protecting all the legitimate commercial kitchens?
No, I think hoarding is definitely a concern. And if you see the Essential Commodities Act, which was put in place right now, they've said that you will get an average of 80% of your last 6 months average supply. So if something like that comes in for LPG, I think that should suffice. The industry is being responsible. I think we as a industry body have also sent out a advisory to all our members to be prudent at this period of time. But I think it's just more so that currently all the allocations going for residential. There is zero allocation for commercial, and we've requested to give us at least some requirement to keep our burners going for the next couple of days.
But turning to Purva Jain, the government, of course, having invoked the Essential Commodities Act, asking the refineries to boost LPG production, it is prioritizing domestic and essential non-domestic supply. But from an energy systems perspective, how much incremental LPG can refineries realistically add quickly? And how effective is priority allocation right now in preventing any kind of broader crunch when it comes to supply?
How much capacity can be boosted needs to be seen, because we were already working at high, at least when even if you increase the refinery capacity, then there's a distribution capacity as well that needs to be seen, your bottling capacity. So there are a lot of parameters that needs to be looked into when you're talking about increasing capacity rapidly. Of course, it's a emergency situation, and where everybody would work harder and more to bring in higher capacities. But along with that, what needs to be seen also is a longer term perspective, and how we can manage this challenge of energy dependence for cooking fuels in the Middle East and other nations, because we have been seeing these disruptions repeatedly in the past as well, and that leads to higher current account deficits, higher subsidy payouts. So it leads to a very difficult fiscal situation for us as a country. So there needs to be a longer term planning as well in the pipeline to ensure energy independence when it comes to cooking fuels in the country.
From the Union Minister right now, we are hearing sounds of assurance coming in. He is saying, and I'm quoting what he's put out on X, he says, we have taken steps to ensure that 100% supply of CNG and PNG to domestic consumers is ensured, and other industries continue to get 70 to 80% of their supplies despite the war situation. That's what he's saying. He says we are committed to ensure uninterrupted supply of affordable energy to our domestic consumers. There is no shortage for domestic consumers and no reason to panic. Is there panic? That's the important question right now. Are we in that situation? Sanjay Kumar, on the last mile logistics, where the bottlenecks tend to be, distributors pausing because of the stock uncertainty, the fleet constraints, the credit exposure even, after the kind of changes we've seen in prices. So what is the coordination protocol between the oil marketing companies, the distributors, the industry bodies? What would it take for better coordination to unlock immediate deliveries? At least what we have should be distributed well.
Okay, so there are two segments of the supply chain. One is the private, which is the Totals of the world, and then you have the public, which is the IOC, the HPC, and so on. And what is important to realize is just refining is not the solution, because not all LPG comes from crude. Majority of it comes from gas, natural gas. So to your question on how this whole interface between the supply chain and consumption will change, well, in the near term, I don't think that can happen, because PNG can only be a substitute where you already have the back-end infrastructure. However, for the shorter term, what can work as a solution, especially for the food industry, if that crisis were to happen, is to look at industrial establishments where you have boiler units and you move the recipes to more, steam-based cooking. But whether it is induction, whether it is PNG, yes, these are longer-term solutions. But as someone said, the alternate links are there on the supply side, which is the US because of its shale gas fracking. But that's a 3-week cycle. And besides, India is constrained in terms of the amount of LPG storage it has. So it cannot store more than 16 to 17 days, even if the supply is there. And LPG is a continuous supply chain. So you can't just buffer up on LPG and then say, I'm going to fix the problem. So what this requires, therefore, is first a deep breath to not panic. And the Honorable Minister said the right thing there. I think, the situation does not warrant a response which is beyond what the situation itself is. Over the next few days, there will be, as we have been discussing, some spikes, because it is a natural human tendency to profit from any crisis.
Yes.
But as far as manufacturing is concerned, I think it would help if the government were to give a nudge to ensure that the spike in domestic consumption, which we've seen in the past 5 years, doesn't, impact manufacturing in a way that it comes back to hurt household incomes and, household production of food itself, because both are interlinked. We can't just say that we will give to households at the cost of manufacturing. That
Right.
would be my view.
Right.
And I think we need to take a wider view to this than just households versus manufacturing.
So, Purva, I just want to ask you, because there is a certain amount of public confusion between LPG and LNG. So, if you can clarify that for us, how do LNG disruptions ripple into LPG's availability and its pricing, and where do they actually not? What's the substitution reality inside India's system as we have it?
So LPG is broadly propane and butane, which is derived from mostly crude oil, and LNG is mostly methane. So it's 94% methane, and the substitution works because we are now in India seeing the piped gas, the one that comes to our houses, the residential piped gas. That's where the cooking aspect of PNG, which is the piped natural gas, is coming in. PNG has domestic allocation, like priority domestic gas allocation. However, in the past, we have seen that a lot has depended on, the imported LNG as well. And that has resulted in high prices of PNG as well. In Delhi, for example, we have seen that the government has stabilized the prices at about 48.3 or 5 SCM, for the last 3 years now. But if you would see the LNG prices globally, they have been moving a lot. Even the gas prices are sealed, they have a ceiling right now in India. And with that, you're able to provide that 48.3 threshold pricing. But if you would start accounting for the actual LNG prices, the global energy prices, which impact your domestic prices as well, you would see a different story altogether. In fact, like you were talking about a metric earlier, another metric to watch out probably would be the Japan-Korea marker, which is a future benchmark price we take to assess that how the spot prices of LNG would move, in the coming days. There we are seeing a lot of increase. So we are seeing the JNK marker already touching at about $21 per MMBTU in May.
Right.
So that is going to be a disruption.
It's a key marker, like you're saying. But Pranav Rungta is back with us. I just want to understand from the restaurant perspective, especially the smaller restaurants who may have to shut in 24 to 48 hours. What is the protocol that you would recommend? Are you talking about shared kitchens right now? To be able to deal with this crisis, do we need the community or industry kind of pooling that is often done, or the priority tags for the high dependence segments? What would you recommend by way of a way to tide over this crisis?
I think it's just prudent use of gas. We use gas for essential cooking and we use for non-essential cooking. Non-essential cooking would be our staff meals, our tea, cooking of rice, stuff which can happen in electric, where there are options to do that. So I think prioritizing the gas usage is the first prudent step to take. The second, I don't think pooling is really possible. There are hygiene concerns, there are sort of recipe trademark concerns. So people won't prefer that. They'd like to go to a restaurant, eat the food which is cooked in the kitchen right there. So I think beyond that, I think what else we have to look at is probably truncating our menus. There's a lot of menu items which require deep cooking. It requires long hours of cooking, overnight cooking. Reduce that from the menu. Put some new, quicker dishes. You can introduce that as crisis dishes and put that on your menu. I think people will appreciate that.
Right, fair enough. But, if commercial cylinders, they remain at 115 rupees, if they remain at that level that much longer, where does the unit economics break for the mid-market kind of dining? Can menu engineering and the kind of energy-efficient appliances, do you think they can realistically bridge that gap, as it were?
So fuel costs overall is about 1 to 2% of our top line.
Yeah.
I think a 5 to 6% increase in fuel costs, which has come in right now, should not really pinch our bottoms for now. But as it keeps increasing, and as we know that spot LPG prices are going up, what most of the panelists said, if it goes to a 20, 30, 40% increase, I think then it'll start pinching us a lot.
Gaura, with the government now asserting that there is ample stock, that they're talking about adequacy, and there is a steady supply as well at 60 odd lakh cylinders a day. So then what is your base case on the timeline to normalization, if that's the case, and which are the policy levers that would perhaps accelerate that?
I think diversification of LNG from other countries, for example, US, though it's more expensive, it takes a longer transit route. Freight costs are more, starting to import, which I'm sure the government is already doing, that they're looking at non-Middle Eastern countries as sources of supply for LNG, because it'll take some time for it to actually, for LPG, for basically gas imports to reach to the country. So whenever the situation in the Middle East, the intensity of the situation eases off a bit, by that time already these supplies reach the country. And for now, temporarily looking, not just looking at the per unit cost, but also looking at just the supply and being willing to take the cost for just to ensure that there is continuity of supply. I think that is more important.
Correct.
It's okay for a short period of time to get supplies, whether it is gas, whether it is crude, at a higher cost.
Correct.
Because ensuring that there is continuity of supply is more important, I think, at this point.
So how do you ensure?
Yeah.
So how do you ensure continuity of supply? Sumit, if India is leaning on Algeria, Australia, Canada, Norway, United Arab Emirates for spot LPG, what are the lead times? What are the freight implications and the port handling constraints that India needs to factor in?
I think as of now, the most important is energy security. So going into economics will not be that much beneficial. But on port constraint, I don't think there is any constraint as of now, because India is already a major importer of energy.
Right.
But what government can look in the near time is like what you were already mentioning about increase in refineries production of LPG. So refineries, as of now, like we produce around 40% of energy, LPG, what we consume. that can be increased to max further 10 to 15% by diverting whatever polypropylene production was there to LPG.
Right.
So that is one of the major point I think refineries are doing. Apart from that, yeah, situation is tough, and I think even sourcing from US or even Russia and all, it will take there is a lag time of around 6 to 7 weeks.
Fair enough. So, Pranav Rungta, if I were to ask you as we wind this up, one message that you'd like to send out to diners and to staff in restaurants, for at least for the next 72 hours, what would it be?
Stay with us, support us. I know there will be temporary disruptions in your favorite dishes from the menu, but we will be back soon. We will be back firing. So please stay with us and support us.
And Sanjay Kumar, one operational playbook item that you want every restaurateur to implement immediately.
I think the easiest thing to do right now would be to re-engineer menus. And in the Indian diet, there's enough options to do that, which does not require high usage of gas, and to see whether part of it can be either through steam or through electrical. Because at least the one good thing is we don't have a problem with electricity. So
Yes.
though Indian cooking doesn't lend itself to induction cooking, but still in this crisis, I think for restaurants where the quantum of production is lesser, it is possible.
Right.
For us at 3.5 lakh meals a day, it is impossible to substitute an alternate without having a logistical, nightmare.
So then, Gaura, very quick assessment, maybe just one line. Is this a blip or is it a broader macro risk?
It's an impossibility that we are dealing with right now. It's also a function of the way we are located, that hence we are more dependent on Middle Eastern supplies. And during normal times, it actually makes sense to get 60% of your crude and gas supplies at that cost point.
Right.
But yes, we need to start diversifying our sources of energy, as well as looking beyond just the cost the cost point, because this sort of escalation in geopolitical risks or supply disruptions are becoming more and more frequent.
Correct.
So yes, we have to look just beyond the unit economics, and also diversify our sources of energy.
That's an important one. Well, from what we're hearing tonight, at least what we're hearing from the government, demand is steady, of course, right now. Supply is tight. It hasn't quite collapsed. And the immediate path is priority allocation clarity, refinery push, smart imports as well, and disciplined last-mile logistics, with industry, of course, doing its bit through menu rationalization and energy switches, safety-first protocols as well, very important. The next 72 hours are about coordination and transparency, and, of course, the next 2 to 3 weeks will tell us if the global flows normalize and prices stabilize. I want to thank my guests for joining us, Pranav Rungta, Sanjay Kumar Purva Jain, Sumit Ritolia, and Gaura Sen Gupta. Thank you very much. I'm Vikram Oza. This has been an interesting discussion. Of course, we are going to keep monitoring how the LPG supplies really pan out going ahead from here. There are disruptions. West Asia fires are not going to die down anytime soon. How this is going to impact our households is on our radar. Thanks for joining us on The Big Question. Good evening.